Coming up, a secret launch.
Russia launches communication satellites.
And a secret meeting that's becoming not so secret.
Plus an interview with Chris Redcliffe of the SpaceUp Foundation. Stay tuned! Tomorrow begins right now. For real this time.
Welcome to Tomorrow. I'm Carrie Ann Higginbotham, and in a moment I will be joined by Chris Redcliffe. But before we get to that, I'd like to give a huge shout out to our Patreon Premier members. These are the people who have donated $10 or more to this particular segment of this particular show. And it is so awesome to see every single one of these names. I love it. It is... I'm blown away. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for your support. So, joining me today is Chris Redcliffe.
Hello.
Hello, Chris Redcliffe.
How you doing?
How are you?
I'm doing well.
I'm also doing very well. You may recognize this name from being in our chat room. Those of you who have been with SpaceVidcast and then Tomorrow for extended periods of time, we also recognize this name. Chris Redcliffe, here you are.
Why, yes.
Real life and in person.
I know. I feel a little uncomfortable without the computer screen between us.
Yeah,
but,
well, we have a computer screen between us.
It's to the side. It's not the same.
That is very true.
We'll set up a window, maybe.
So one of the many reasons that we asked you here today, because we would like to speak with you, as we always like to speak with you, is because you've done this really kind of crazy thing called SpaceUp.
Yeah, SpaceUp.
And so why don't we start a little bit with what SpaceUp is,
sure,
and then we can go backwards a little bit as to why on earth this happens to exist.
Right, absolutely.
So what is SpaceUp?
So what SpaceUp is it's the conference you always wish you were going to. In fact, it's the conference that you probably recognize, but turned inside out.
Sure.
So you've been to a conference, a con, some event, a launch actually. This happens at launches as well. And it's great. You're there for the thing, but then you realize that everybody else who is there for the thing as well is really awesome. And so you start talking to them, and you start talking about thorium reactors, and you start talking about going to Mars, and suddenly you're all clumped up in the hallway, and you're like, oh, that's right, we have to go into the thing. We have to stop this awesome conversation.
Ah, yes, we're all here for this other thing.
Yeah,
Got it.
So what SpaceUp is it's all hallway. And it's not really that new a concept. People have been doing these. They're called unconferences or open space conferences for years. But I'm a tech guy, programmer, and I've gone to a lot of these for the tech industry.
For sure.
And when I started going to space conferences, what was that, maybe 2008, 2009, I said, you really need to have an unconference about space. And everybody would say, well, what is that?
Right.
What's an unconference?
For sure.
So I would describe it, and then they would say, invariably, yes, you should do that. That sounds great.
You should do that. So glad you brought that up, so that you could do that.
Exactly, exactly. And so I got tired of telling people about it, and I was like, okay, we're going to give it a name. We're going to put one of them on. Then I can point to it and say, it's like this. It's like this thing that we've done.
Nice.
But it didn't stop there. So, yeah.
It didn't stop there. All right, so that's kind of what it is. That's sort of how you got into it. I'm afraid to even ask what the first one was like for you.
So
I don't know if we've ever gotten that part on record.
So it was great.
Okay.
And Karen, my wife, calls it our space wedding.
Nice.
Because it was a lot of really hard work to put on. We had no idea how it was going to turn out. It was super expensive for us, which we'll talk about in a little while.
Totally.
Went on the credit card, that kind of thing. But then it turned out just absolutely magical. Because, I mean, you know this. You have kind of the stars of your space world. Right. You know, the Dave Mastins of the world, the kind of like, wouldn't it be cool to be in a room with those people? Right. And we were in a room with those people. And we were, it's like, around the table was JPL and other NASA, like NASA HQ and, Mastin and, people from X Prize. And we were all talking about stuff. And it was like, this is really neat. So.
I love it. I love it. That's so amazing. So what year was that? What year was the first one?
That was 2010 when it
Really?
happened. Yeah.
Wow,
I know.
that's crazy
So
to think about.
5 years. Yeah, I actually noticed that we started the SpaceUp organizers mailing list 5 years ago,
Okay.
like a couple weeks ago. I had actually started planning it in 2009,
Okay.
but it had a bunch of stumbling because we had kind of the idea for it, and Jesse Clark from the San Diego Space Society, he and I were coming back on the plane from the New Space conference, and we were just kind of plotting this, how we would do it. And so we made an effort, but couldn't quite bring it all together. And so didn't happen in 2009, did happen in spring 2010.
Awesome. I
Yes.
was just sort of asking just for kind of like for the history lesson part of it, but then I realized I didn't remember what year it was. And
You've been through a bit since then.
apparently.
Yeah.
Good.
But I can tell from the shirt that you were there.
Yes, I have one of the original shirts. Thank you very
And
much.
you can't see this, but on the back it says launch crew,
does
which
it?
means that
Oh,
Carrie Ann
yeah.
was one of the special people who made it happen. So
Well, you know, we tried. So, okay, so since then, there have been one or two others, right?
yes, there have been a lot.
And I assume all of them local.
Well, they're local to themselves. Exactly.
I'm giving you trouble.
No, that's the thing. So that's the funny thing is that each SpaceUp is local, but then they go global. So there's been a SpaceUp Los Angeles. That's a lot of fun. Went to that one. SpaceUp San Francisco. That was a lot of fun. But then they spread, and so there was SpaceUp DC. And SpaceUp. Now I'm gonna forget.
I
all
know.
the places.
Okay, here's the deal, you guys.
The UK.
There are so many. There have been so many, not just in the U.S. Exactly as you're saying.
India,
There,
Australia.
all over the world, and multiples. And sometimes people kind of get, I don't want to say sick of, but they sort of get restless of having them in the same spots. Goodness gracious. What a problem to have. They'll be in the same general vicinity, but then at different venues and whatnot, which is just so amazing. Did you, in your wildest dreams, think that this was going to be a thing?
Well, yes
I mean,
and no.
other than hoping
yes and
for
no.
it?
Well, see, that's the weird thing because SpaceUp is based directly on an unconference called Barcamp.
Okay.
And Barcamp did the exact same thing where it just kind of spread like wildfire. And what I saw with Barcamp is it just kind of spread, and then the original people who did the original one, they kind of went off on their own.
Gotcha.
With SpaceUp, it has spread, but still everybody comes back and they're like, so how do you do one of these?
That's so funny.
It's like, how do we get connected with people? It's like, what are the steps to make it happen?
Interesting.
And they come back to me.
Right.
And so, I'd like to think of myself as kind of the dancing monkey for the SpaceUp community,
I love
where
it.
I will happily get up in front of everybody and it's not even parade leader because that would imply I have some sort of direction.
Oh,
but
we should give you a staff, though.
yes, I would love that.
Really quickly, there's a question from our chat room. Vax Headroom asked, was DC in 2010 the second one? I imagine saying the second SpaceUp ever.
Right. So there was San Diego in 2010 in February, and then you're right, Vax. DC was the second because Mike Dornbos, who did the DC. He went to San Diego to get to know. And actually, that was one of the things that was a little bit weirder about San Diego is that I actually invited a whole bunch of people from around the country, again, because I hoped they would go back home and do the thing. So yeah, that was the very second. And I think Houston was right after that.
Something like that, yeah. I felt like it. All right, so should we talk a little bit about how to do a SpaceUp?
Yeah.
And or what SpaceUp is doing to help other people do SpaceUp?
Right. Yeah.
that
Let's do the one and then the second. Yeah, absolutely.
How do you want to start?
Right. So let's talk about how to do a SpaceUp because that's what I really want to encourage everybody to do. And it's despite what I just said about the space wedding, because I did it exactly the wrong way.
Sure, but the first time you do anything, you don't know.
Right, and that's really what it comes down to, is that we did all the things all at once, and including all the expensive things that nobody would really need to. Mike Dornbos in DC, He actually put on the whole thing for $0.
Awesome.
And it's because he didn't buy everybody food, and the place was donated, and he didn't make T-shirts, although I made T-shirts later. But
that's all right.
Because, you know, you can't have no T-shirt. But so there's a way to do it on the cheap and on the fly. But what you do is you start by thinking about, it's like, okay, here's where I am. Where am I going to have this? You find your local, we had it at the Air and Space Museum. There might be a local kind of other kind of museum, like a natural history museum or that kind of thing. There's the local university or even a particularly big high school. Somebody that might have that kind of affinity with space. You find the venue, and then you find 2 people to help you, because otherwise you will go crazy.
Okay. Good. At least a team of 3.
Exactly. And then what you do is you go to spaceup.org, and we have a whole page kind of listing out like what happens next. And one of the things that happens next is you get connected with all the other people who've put on SpaceUps.
Awesome.
Because you can go out and ask and say, it's like, should I be getting everybody coffee? That was actually a question pretty recently.
That's a good question.
They were asking about it in Phoenix. And, you know, it's like, yeah, actually, it turns out, you know, you probably want to get everybody coffee, because having extra coffee isn't nearly as terrifying as having not enough coffee.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is very true. You want people to be awake.
Yeah, well, you want people to be happy at you and not cranky coffee at you.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
All right. I like it.
Yeah. So, you know, just tips like that, and the organizers have great tips, and you know, I am one of the SpaceUp organizers, and so I can pitch in on that as well.
Perfect. I love it. All right. So spaceup.org. So you're interested in doing a SpaceUp. You've got a couple of friends.
Right.
You have some ideas.
Yep.
You hit up spaceup.org.
Yes.
You read anything and everything you could possibly get your hands on.
Yeah. And then you run into the hurdles.
All right.
Let's talk about the hurdles.
Hurdles. Good. Let's go.
Because one of the things you'll notice when you go to spaceup.org is that there are a bunch in Europe. There are a big bunch of them in Europe.
A lot, yeah.
Very well attended. They sell out a month in advance.
Yeah.
They're great. Not so many in the United States
for sure
currently. And including, if you go and you look at the list of the past SpaceUps, you know, all of those places that I listed, they don't have plans for this year yet.
Okay.
And it's because of those hurdles. So there are a couple of them. One is the whole, you know, you need to find 2 other people.
Right.
Which, you know, can be a bit of a challenge, but it's not nearly as much of a challenge as doing the whole thing yourself.
For sure.
You know, there have been SpaceUp organizers, including in Los Angeles, who did that, and they made it happen, and it's great when it happens, but then they're like, no, I'm not going to do that next year. Burnout. So you don't want to do that. That's a hurdle you can take care of yourself. A couple of the others are a little bit more difficult. Sometimes, so like I said, you know, museums and libraries and places like that as venues, you walk in and you say, I want to have an event. And they say, great, what organization are you with? And you say, myself?
Right, me, myself, and I.
And they say, wonderful, that'll be $10,000.
Right.
Because you're not a nonprofit, you don't fit in with our kind of mission.
Right.
And so maybe we have this kind of little side thing. You walk in and you say, I am with nonprofit organization A, and they say, great, we'd love to donate the space or give you a huge discount or that kind of thing. So it makes it a lot easier if you're aligned with a nonprofit organization.
Okay.
Usually that's like an NSS chapter or AIAA, SEDS, the Students for the Exploration and Development of Space.
Yes.
It says, you know, paying the acronym penalty.
Yes.
But that kind of thing. And that's actually one of the big reasons why SpaceUps have worked really well in Europe, is because ESA is a very strong backer of SpaceUps.
The European Space Agency.
The European, oh, I did it again.
That's okay.
Exactly. So they actually say, have the SpaceUp at our center in this other country, in another country. So, and it also, I mean, the most recent one was SpaceUp Cologne. And it was at this beautiful ESA training center.
Nice.
And so it's the kind of thing where they've got the giant pool and they've got the space station modules underneath, and you kind of train there. So they had a lot of fun there.
I bet.
But it means that the venue's taken care of. And
Right.
once you have a venue, you can say, we're going to have it on this day. You can, open registration. It takes care of a lot of things. It's
Totally.
kind of downhill from there. So the other hurdle, again, with the U.S. ones, and if you have the venue, is sometimes it's an inexpensive venue. You're all set up. You still have to pay some kind of, what do you call that thing, deposit.
Sure.
And it can be, $2,000.
Okay.
$2,000, which for an event is not much.
Right.
Most events you're spending $50,000. Don't spend $50,000 on a SpaceUp,
no,
please.
there's no need
just
for
don't. Don't spend $10,000 on a SpaceUp. But that's what they're used to,
Right.
and so it's kind of this pittance. But that's a lot.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a big one to get beyond.
Sure.
And so that segues into the next thing.
Awesome. SpaceUp.org.
Exactly.
And SpaceUp as a nonprofit.
Right. So after, we've been doing this for 5 years now, and
We've learned some tricks and tips.
exactly, one of the things that we learned is that those two big blockers come up for a lot of people. And so what we did was we formed a nonprofit organization specifically to put on SpaceUps.
Awesome.
And so it's open for business now. You can actually do it.
Yay!
Exactly. We're signing up our first, what we call phase 1 SpaceUps, where they can be projects of the organization. And as a result, when you walk into the library and you say, I'd love to use this space, and they say, what organization are you with? And you say, well, SpaceUp, of course.
Of
We're
course.
with SpaceUp, the foundation.
How do you
Here's
not
our
know?
EIN, and we have all of our paperwork, and you can
Love
look
it.
us up in the database, and we're all legitimate. So that's great. That's like step 1 down. That's perfect. And then what we do from the foundation side is just to make sure that the I's are dotted and such. We just ask that you identify the 3 people who are going to be doing the work, and then that's it. Pick
Perfect.
3 people. So that first kind of step.
Right.
And then what we're doing is that phase 2, which is you don't need a ton of money to start one of these. You just need that little bit that you can count on, that you're not thinking, oh, if I spend too much on this, I'm going to be out a couple
Right.
grand, and I'm not going to want to do that twice. So we take some of the fear out of it, some of the risk.
Awesome.
In order to do that, though, the foundation itself needs to have some money.
Okay.
So we've got, should I talk about the
Sure.
Kickstarter? Yeah.
Why
So
not?
Carrie Ann's on the board.
Yes.
And because she's on the board, she can say these things. So we're going to do a Kickstarter to put on 5 SpaceUps
So excited.
in the U.S. this year, which plus Phoenix will be as many SpaceUps as there have ever been in a year.
Awesome.
Now, I personally think that, it's the United States, and, you just pick a city near you. Think of it. How many cities like that do we have? I picked off, like 35, 40 of them that are
Right.
just, easy no-brainers.
Right.
They've got NASA centers or space things, so not a problem. But we're going to do 5.
Looking at you, Ohio.
5. Ohio.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. DJ Flux, come on.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always talking about Ohio and space history. Just saying.
Yes, exactly.
All of Ohio can manage to figure out how to do a space up.
You can do this.
You're on.
'Cause, I'm sure you can find 100 people, and that's about twice as many as you need for an awesome space up. But anyway, so what was this? Oh, so we're gonna have 5 of them, and so we're gonna raise, like I said, $1,000 to $2,000 for 5 of them. You can do the math.
Yep.
That's not much for
Not
a
a whole
Kickstarter.
lot.
We're not raising $4 million.
For sure.
We're just gonna raise a little bit. Have some nice rewards. The biggest one of them is that you get to go to the SpaceUp.
That's so
For
cool.
pretty cheap, actually. So that's the big reward. But then we're going to make patches for them and stickers and T-shirts if we raise enough.
Gotta have t-shirts.
Because the awesome T-shirts can be awesome. So yeah, we're going to start that pretty soon. It'll probably be another month or so, but
Perfect.
yeah.
Perfect. We will totally have that on the show because space ups are, in some cases, life-changing. We have had had it all. Have it at a space up, it feels like.
Yeah.
We've had accidents. We've had relationship starts. We've had planes overhead. We've had tribbles flying. It's unreal. Every person I've ever talked to who've ever gone to any space up, even space ups that I personally have not attended, because I usually talk to those people just because, you know, we're all there, we talk to each other, has some kind of really interesting story happen to them, either from the space up or at the space up. It's so awesome, you guys. I can't even.
My favorite story is Derek Nye.
Derek Nye. Tell me about Derek Nye.
So Derek, first space up, I ran across him on Twitter, and at the time he wasn't sure whether he wanted to go into to be an airplane mechanic or to be a DJ.
Okay.
So he was doing a little bit of both.
Okay.
So he had his MySpace page with his his music.
Love it.
And it was very spacey music, and I was like, this would be great for this first space up, kind of set the tone.
Right.
So I contacted him. I said, would you like to come be the DJ at this event? And I had to explain it to him, that kind of thing.
For
He was
sure.
like, that would be great. Well, by the time the event came around, he kind of decided not to do the DJ thing, but he was kind of at loose ends. But like I said, the first one was at the Air and Space Museum.
Right.
So he met all of these people who work on like replica planes and that kind of thing,
Yeah.
and they brought him on as an intern. At the same time, he met X-Corps, which, X-Corps, they make
Yes.
rocket planes.
Yes.
And they said, well, give us a call when you're ready, and we'll think about doing an internship.
Very cool.
And he did. So he went from internship at the museum to the internship at the rocket company, and that worked out, and so he then got hired on.
Very
So
cool.
now he's building rocket ships.
I love it.
So, yeah, I love that story.
I love it. That is very, very cool. Okay, we have
Oh, geez.
so many questions in the chat room, you guys. This is awesome. I love it. Okay, let's see. Neuropilot asked, have you ever scheduled a launch at a space up? I imagine you mean a space up at a launch, or maybe you do mean like a small rocket
We did
launch.
have a rocket engine at a space up. That was at SpaceUp LA, the first.
Yes.
And X-Corps, actually, I want to say that it was an igniter.
That's
I know
another
nothing
kind of
about rocket
success
science,
story. That
but
was a Michael Clive production, was it not?
Yes, it was.
Michael Clive, who at the time was not interning with X-Corps, got an internship at X-Corps, and I believe now works at SpaceX.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah, there was a little rocket demonstration.
little rocket demonstration.
Complete with mishaps and scrubs.
Many mishaps, many screw-ups, and a lot of bug bites, if I remember correctly. But that was a very cool thing. Does SpaceUp have anything to do with Yuri's Night, which is going on next week? BZ Wing Zero asked if I see that correctly. While I don't believe the two are necessarily associated per se, I know a lot of people like to do space ups right around Yuri's Night, either in conjunction with a Yuri's Night party or instead of a Yuri's Night party, that sort of thing. They do seemingly go hand in hand, don't
Yeah,
they?
there's actually kind of this continuum of events that I've seen that all go together. There's Yuri's Night, which it's just great fun.
Heck yeah.
It's like invite the whole community to your space party. Go. Yeah, absolutely. Sign me up for that. And then, of course, there's Space Up, which is more of the, be doused in the space community. There's also Startup Weekend Space, which is a really interesting one, an offshoot of, again, a tech-focused startup
course.
weekend, where you go for a weekend and you actually create a company from scratch, a space company,
Yay!
in a weekend.
Awesome.
And I've seen those. Those are actually Ruben, who went to SpaceUp San Francisco, is now involved in Startup Weekend Space.
Very cool. Ruben Metcalf, shout out there.
Yeah.
Citizen 54 asks, or no, it's just kidding, final test, sorry. Question was, what has been your favorite topic covered at a space up so far, and or strangest? That is a fantastic question.
Oh, so many good ones.
We could just talk about that for a long time.
So there was the one year, this was during one of the elections, so I guess it must have been the 2012 election.
Okay.
And Newt Gingrich had gotten up and said, we could have a colony on Mars by
Yes.
2020 or whatever.
Right.
And the next week there was SpaceUp San Diego, and Dave Masson basically did a whole roundtable on could we actually do this and how would we go about this, and that was just like riveting.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, so much fun. I love SpaceUps. Now I'm itching. PC Wing Zero asked, what has been your favorite topic covered? Oh, no, we already did that. Sorry, I apologize. Space Mike asked, has anyone ever suited up for a space up? Like an astronaut outfit? Or...
So...
Well, you've got your jumpsuit.
If you go, I mean, I don't even know how hard you'd have to look.
Probably not very at all.
For the very first and subsequent, so I've got this flight suit that I got at Space Camp. So I went to Space Camp when I was 30.
Amazing.
Because you can.
Because you can.
Great.
And I don't see why not.
And so I had this, full flight suit from there. All the fun patches and things. And, when do you get to wear that? So I was like, it's my space wedding, so I put it on, and it was really easy to find me, that kind of thing. So there was that. And I want to say, I mean, X-Corps has brought a suit, like a full suit, to SpaceUp Los Angeles. Nobody really wore it.
Right.
Because you don't want to really touch the real suits.
Yeah, that's
bad news.
It's a little scary.
But, and then I'm pretty sure at least the Mars Society San Diego probably brought their analog spacesuit from the Mars Desert Research Station, where they make the full, the simulated suits so that it's heavy and you get the gloves and you can't do those things. So.
Right. I could see Karen, Chris West, just barely off your shoulder here, and I could see the perforation. She's shaking her head. Yes.
Yes,
good.
That's
I love having confirmation on that.
My better brain says yes.
This is a great question, and I definitely want to make sure that we get to this. Penguin Cake asks, why does SpaceUp.org site have a big picture crying space is boring?
Yes.
Another great conversation.
Click on that picture. I think it links through to the video.
It should.
And the video is wonderful. That was also from the very first Space Up. It's Andy Cochran, who he's in the visual effects industry. He's not a space guy. I really got to look for the red light.
You're fine.
He's not a space guy, but he's interested. And so he came to Space Up San Diego. And part of the Space Ups are these T-5 talks, which is a 5-minute, like, kind of lightning round sort of talk. And he wrote one that day about how do we get people excited about space. And he titled it Space is Boring. And the great thing about that is that it's the first thing that comes out of his mouth. Space is boring. And he goes on to say, all of these things that as of 2010, NASA was making boring and could spice up. But at the same time, he didn't have any water with him.
Yes.
And he hadn't really practiced this talk. And so he starts to get kind of choked up, but it registers as emotion.
Yes.
And so everybody's just like, yeah, you tell it. So anyway, it was great. It's actually worth clicking through to the video.
It works on multiple levels, because as someone who's interested in space, your immediate reaction is this visceral sort of like, who's this? What's going? Why would you say such a thing? Space is not boring, and that is that's the point.
Yes.
And yet at the same time, we as an industry do have a tendency, because we're all looking for this, we simultaneously want it to be boring to a certain extent. You want it to be boring enough where planes fly every single day.
Right.
We have things that fly in the air, huge machines that should not get off the ground every single day, and it is one of the most boring things ever until something wrong happens, and then that's extremely unfortunate. But we as space people who are interested in space want to be spacefarers and want it to be every single day. We want it to be boring like that. So while it's not even remotely there yet, space is boring is great as that sort of mantra of, it's not actually boring, and yet at the same time, I want it to sort of be boring. It works on multiple levels as far as I'm concerned. Matt Bates asks, any SpaceUp related events in UK anytime soon? Is SpaceUp.org a place where people can find out about other SpaceUps?
Yes. So short answer to that is yes. You can go to SpaceUp.org. You can look at the SpaceUp near you, and there's a whole bunch of links off to other things. One place I would actually go to look is Twitter specifically. And SpaceUp is kind of a child of Twitter because we all met over Twitter.
We did.
And specifically, there's a SpaceUp UK Twitter account.
Oh, very cool.
And so if you want to go to Twitter, ask Twitter, SpaceUp UK, I'm pretty sure, again, I don't know any more than you do, but I'm pretty sure I've seen some kind of inklings that there are plans afoot.
Very nice.
And at the very least, you can say, hey, I'd love to be involved in those plans that you have for
Heck
this
yes.
upcoming SpaceUp UK.
This is a great question. Citizen54 asks, when's the first SpaceUp Mars? I assume you mean SpaceUp on Mars. Because I feel like we always talk about Mars.
Oh, yeah.
And SpaceUps.
Yeah, and I've actually thought that we really should soon have a Mars-themed SpaceUp, something where all of the topics are Mars settlement topics. But SpaceUp Mars will probably happen about, 3 or 4 months after, you get more than 4 people on Mars.
Sure.
So.
As soon as you can have more than one pod.
Right, exactly. When they're like, oh, I don't want to be part of this discussion anymore. And that's actually, I don't think we even mentioned that. Part of the format is that there are multiple topics going on at once.
Yes.
And so if you don't like where you're sitting, if you're not learning, if you're not contributing, you are obligated to get up on your feet and walk to a place where you are. The last SpaceUp LA, I don't know if you, pod 4?
But yeah, we just made
or
our own
pod 5.
pod.
I don't even remember what it was. Yeah, they just took a circle of chairs, renamed it pod 5, and that was actually where some of the more interesting talks were going on.
It really was. So. When people ask me about SpaceUp, what SpaceUp is, assuming they don't understand the unconference analogy, I ask them if they've ever been to any other sort of regular conference. And they say yes. And I said, great. So you show up, they hand you a piece of paper that says, here are all the people who are speaking, here are all the rooms that they're speaking in, here are all the topics that they are speaking about. And you go, awesome, and you try to figure out where you want to go. I said, the only difference is you show up and all of that information is blank. And everyone who is there, they are now the speakers, or can be the speakers. You decide the topics and you decide the rooms. Yeah. There you go. And you have these rooms to work with.
Right.
Be fruitful.
So the key is invite awesome people, and then
you have awesome conversations.
I don't need to tell you what to talk about. You're going to find something.
I love it. That's so awesome. What if a Kickstarter gets overfunded, and then in conjunction with that, why Kickstarter instead of Indiegogo?
Yeah, actually. So 2 questions there, and these are things that I've actually given a lot of thought to over the past 2 years that I've been planning this.
This is why we put our trust in you.
Yeah.
Founder.
First, the why Kickstarter and not Indiegogo. I've done Kickstarters in the past. Actually, this shirt came out of a Kickstarter because somebody wrote. Actually, Doug Ellison wrote this on a chalkboard.
Yeah.
You actually snapped a photo, and I saw your photo and said that needs to be a T-shirt. Kickstarter done. And what Kickstarter offers, and I understand that Indiegogo has a lot of the same things now.
Right.
So at this point, it's mostly just preference. But the Kickstarter style is that if we don't get the funds, then the thing doesn't happen. And in this case, it is literally true. If we don't get these funds, these 5 SpaceUps aren't going to happen otherwise. That's why we've gone forward with this.
Right.
If you look at the SpaceUps in the US last year, there were maybe 2, not 6 or 10, or really what it should be is like, SpaceUp every weekend. So they're not going to happen if this doesn't get funded. That's just because I'm going to go back to putting this thing as a shoestring operation, and we'll kind of help people out when we can. The flip side of that is if you fund it, these SpaceUps are going to happen. I will make sure of that.
Nice.
And if we're going to have a whole list of them for you to choose from.
Yay.
You see it on the Kickstarter project page. And if like the top 5 can't happen, then the next one might, or the next one might, and we will help them with their venue deposit or whatever they need.
Nice.
So that's the guarantee. What do we do if we're overfunded? I have all the spreadsheets and the specs and the diagrams at home. And what I actually retuned all the backer rewards so that the main rewards are actually strongly limited. So that, $25 and you get to go to a SpaceUp, there are only 100 of those.
Gotcha.
And, just so you know, there are usually about 100 people at a SpaceUp.
Yeah,
and there are
give or
going to be
take.
5 of these. And so there's probably going to be a stampede for those. And so there's a higher level with a little bit more of them, higher level with a bit more of them, and then nothing. That's it. If it taps out, then it's done. Now there are 2 levels, probably. Don't quote me on any of this. It's not like it's on, the internet or anything.
No.
There are 2 levels that are going to be unlimited, but they're the $1 level and the $5 level. And so for $1, you get a vote to which of these SpaceUps do you think should be happening? At the $5 level, you get that, and then when they happen, you get some extra kind of kickbacks from them.
Nice.
So if we fund big, then we'll make stuff. Exactly.
Perfect.
And in terms of where the money goes, if we way overfund, some of it goes to the SpaceUps themselves, and then some of it we're going to use to actually fund some of this infrastructure that we're building up, like accounting, for instance, right now, which is a Google spreadsheet made by me, and that's not really going to fly if you're putting $50,000 to this organization.
Right.
So we've actually contracted with a firm they're called Mission Edge, and it's a nonprofit firm that does accounting for nonprofits.
Very cool.
Except you have to pay them. I know people.
How
today.
Weird.
What?
That's a weird thing. I don't know.
So we actually get to pay for that service, and then we get the service, and it means that we don't get sued by the IRS. So
All right. Not getting sued.
It's a nice thing.
Yeah, star. One more tip for you people out there. Let's see, more questions from the chat room. What does a normal civilian need to do to attend a SpaceUp? I would say find one in your area and see if there are tickets left. And then go.
Yeah,
Right?
there's some specific things that you can do. So if you're in Europe anywhere, then go to SpaceUpEurope.org, I think. It's out there. Google knows.
Google it.
Or watch SpaceUp Europe on Twitter, and they will retweet all of the SpaceUps in Europe. But if you're not in Europe, and if you're in the United States, watch for this Kickstarter, because that's going to be your best chance at influencing where SpaceUps go next. And I'll let you in a little secret, just between you guys and me, is that we're going to have a long list of potential SpaceUps. We're going to fund the top 5, and we are going to push like heck on all of the rest of them.
Perfect.
So we might end up with 30 more SpaceUps this year. We're just going to guarantee the 5. So if you go and you do the voting and you put in your dollar and you get your, then you never know what might happen.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. Oh my goodness. So much information. I already know all of this stuff, and it feels overwhelming to me. So, to wrap up, spaceup.org, great tool.
Yes.
Hit Twitter, look for SpaceUp things, like SpaceUp Europe, SpaceUp UK, even SpaceUp.org, right?
Right. You can actually just search for SpaceUp
Really?
on Twitter now, and it's all SpaceUps, and it's not other things. I just won't.
So amazing. I love it. Oh, I love it. And then when spaceup.org has a Kickstarter for SpaceUps, tomorrow we'll have that information.
Yes.
Yeah, I like it.
We will?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. We're gonna put that in the show. Ben doesn't know that yet. He knows now. That's it. You just watched Carrie Ann make an executive decision.
Boom!
there went the co-dash, and now it's just host.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up here with you, and then we're gonna go to a commercial break, and then when we come back, we're gonna have news, and then you will be joining us for After Dark, maybe?
Yes.
Yes. More with Chris Redcliffe and Benjamin Higginbotham when we come back.
Keeps on moving, but he keeps on
And welcome back to the show. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. Now, before we get into some space news, I did want to give a huge shout out to all of the patrons of tomorrow who have helped to make this specific segment of this episode go. That's easy for me to say. These are the people who've contributed $5 or more. Wait, I've forgotten our Patreon levels. Did we lower that to? It's $5 or more. That's what that is. $5 or more. I'm a terrible human being. This is not going to be a repeat of last week. This is not going to be a repeat of last week to the show. We'd like to thank everyone who helped make this show go. Now, you can find more information over at patreon.com/TMRO. Now, before we go into news, I do want to say we are going to be opening a brand new Patreon campaign over at patreon.com/SpacePod. So if you prefer the SpacePod, you can contribute to those. The reward levels, like the contribution levels, are substantially lower because we have so many more shows per week. Instead of one show per week, right now there are 4. Soon there will be 5 shows per week of SpacePods. And we're trying to get to about $100 or so per SpacePod. That will be basically break even once we get to that level. It's actually a little bit more. It's like $125 per SpacePod. So that's where we're trying to get to now. If you enjoy the live shows and you want to keep funding the live shows, awesome. They're not changing. They're right here. Just keep your money where it's at. If you prefer the SpacePods, you can pick your money up from the live show and drop it into the SpacePod. Or if you like them both, you can split it in half, put it in both. Whatever you think is fair. And at the end of the day, that's kind of how all of these are set up. It's whatever value you get out of the show. If you that was Minnesotan of me. Get out of the show.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead and put back into the show, and we will then use that to help grow it and do cool new things.
Yes.
Best example of that is we've grown and we're doing SpacePods. So now you get 6 shows per week eventually. Right now it's 5, but 5 to 6 shows per week of space geekery each and every week. At least that's the plan. All right, let's go ahead and get started with that space news. First up is Long March 3C. This was a secret launch. This is about all the more footage we could get. Don't breathe in the cloud. Slightly toxic.
The red one?
And yeah, pretty much. So all right, so it's going to go away in a second. That was March 30th at 13:52 Coordinated Universal Time. That also debuted their new Expedition 1 upper stage. Can you pronounce that? Is it Yongsheng? I'm sorry, I'm terrible with pronunciations. Yongsheng? I think something like that. Do you know it, Mike?
I think it's Yongsheng.
Yongsheng.
Something along those lines. There was a media blackout during this launch itself, so the media didn't actually know that it was happening. They only kind of released it after the fact of, yay, this was successful. This was the what is this? The BDS-L1S, the BDU Phase 3 system. It's basically China's GPS system.
Okay.
So we're going to call it China's GPS system because I can't pronounce anything.
Yeah, we are.
So there you go. That
Very
happened
cool.
on March 30th.
Neat.
Next up, Mike, you have a Rokot rocket.
That's right. The Rokot launched on March 31st at 13:48 Universal Coordinated Time, and they launched a trio of communication satellites called the Gonets M satellites. And what these are, they are data relay satellites that are able to give secure messaging for either mobile devices or fixed locations. And the purpose of these specific communication satellites are to provide those data relay services to underdeveloped areas in the north of Russia. And this whole constellation of Gonets is going to be 12 satellites, and with these 3 satellites that are launched on this Rokot, that constellation is now going to be operational as soon as they activate them. But also there was a secret military satellite that was also launched on this Rokot, and there's no details as to what that is, but technically this was 4 satellites in one instead of just 3. So we'll see if we ever find out what that secret satellite ever was.
All right.
Back to you, Ben.
Speaking of secrets, because apparently that's the theme right now.
Also, I would point out, last week we showed a slate that said there were no satellite launches this week, and I think we just showed that same slate this week. No scheduled launches.
It's like an Easter egg hunt.
Secret.
Is it really? Is it what's coming up this week?
Yeah.
I don't know. I have no. Anyhow, yeah. All right.
It's
More secrets.
Yeah, more secrets. The voices are saying there are more. So who knows, right? There might be more secret launches.
So this secret workshop talking about humans actually getting to Mars.
So basically, it was like a secret space up.
It was like a secret space up.
right?
I'm sorry, I find that way funnier than I should. This is called the Humans Orbiting Mars Workshop. And this was one of the main people names you will recognize is Bill Nye.
The planetary guy?
Bill Nye, the planetary guy, was doing this workshop. And everyone at this particular workshop did, in fact, come to a consensus. I cannot stress this enough. Came to a consensus on ways to be able to get humans to Mars in an efficient way.
Which means like with a realistic budget, right? Not something that requires NASA to have $2 quadrillion.
Right. Realistic budget, realistic timeline, anything and everything. We're not talking warp drive, like crazy. Unbelievable. Okay, so it's a credible plan for a long-term humans to Mars program that consists of that constrains costs by minimizing new developments. An independent cost estimate showed that such a program would fit within the budget that we've got right now. Inflation was also taken into concern. Also looking at things like the International Space Station, how that could play a role. An orbital mission in 2033 is what we're looking at.
That's where they lose me. This is one thing that I think Mars One got right, which is you got a 10-year time limit. Regular people willing to support these things, they can think forward 10 years, barely 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
So?
All right, keep going.
I said realistic, Ben.
How dare I?
Exactly. Orbital mission by 2033, enable scientific exploration of Mars and its moons, all of that fun stuff. Landing humans on Mars affordably and logically somewhere later in the 2030s. So we're actually talking about more scientific orbital stuff, 2033, a little bit later, 2035, 37, 40, something.
So the full report on that's coming out later this year.
It was
kind of a secretive meeting because they didn't want press there. They didn't want I think they wanted a free information like idea flow.
Yes.
And they didn't want to have to worry about will something be taken out of context.
Precisely.
Right? So it was kind of let's sit down, create a think tank, and just how can we do this?
Yes. Yes. I mean, yeah, it's really interesting. And
actually, I'd love to see the exact same think tank in a SpaceUp.
Yeah.
I wonder how the two would differ and what would come up. You get really interesting stuff like that. When you have people outside of the space industry, they don't think like space geeks, and sometimes they they zig instead of zag, and you get some really interesting ideas sometimes.
Space sometimes is
boring.
Huh. Yep. Huh. Very cool.
It's a technical thing. All right, moving along. The Astra rocket company, who has the Vasir engine, they've won a NASA propulsion contract called Next Step. That stands for Next Space Technologies for Exploration Partnerships. That is what I call a backronym. They clearly wanted to call it Next Step and had to figure out how to do that.
Whatever, it works.
The official announcement was made on March 30th of this last week. Now, Vasir, we actually had them on at Astra Rocket Company to talk about that engine. So if you'd like, you can go back in our archives and watch that whole show. It's actually a very fun, fascinating show. This contract is going to get them $10 million over the course of 3 years. They've currently got the VX200 engine that they've been testing. Whenever you look at like this footage right here, this is the VX200. You see it do whoosh. It's like awesome. And these are short duration bursts. These are like 1 minute or less. And they're 1 minute or less for funding reasons because they're testing stuff. They want to just see if this will work, and kind of they're trying to prove out the engine before it's ready in space. However, for a engine like this, it actually needs to be able to run for an extended amount of time. It needs to be able to run an hour, 10 hours, 100 hours. And that's kind of what this will help do. So a long duration test up to 100 hours is now needed and kind of being put on the boards. And a new prototype is being developed called the VX200SS, which stands for steady state. So we can expect to see that in the hopefully somewhat near term future. And also remember that one of those engines is going up to the space station as well to hopefully be used for some, test out the engine, and then you could potentially use it on station for like station keeping the space station in the proper orbit. So you can do some really neat things with that. The big downfall of Vasir engines is the amount of power required. You hear things like, oh, we can get to Mars in just under 40 days. You can, as long as you have an insane, crazy power supply, the size of which and scale of which we've never put into space before.
Oh, is that all?
That's all. Sure.
So then, yeah, 40 days.
Sure, but no.
What he said.
Sure, but no. And actually, go back to that interview. We cover all of that and some really great topics. So go back in time and go back in time and watch it live. Is my suggestion.
And ask your current questions.
Little time machine. Ask your current questions. It'll be great. It'll help improve the show.
Tomorrow.
All right, Mike. CCiCap.
Yeah, there was a update with CCiCap. The original deadline, well, the deadline has been pushed back for the CCiCap a couple of times, the Commercial Crew Integrated capability. Boeing has completed all of their projects right around or milestones, I should say, right around the time that the CCTCap transportation capability was announced. But for the deadlines for SpaceX and Sierra Nevada, there are still a few milestones left over. For SpaceX, NASA has pushed back the deadline to be able to do the 2 abort tests that they need to do for the Dragon capsule to December 31st of this year. The latest deadline for them was March 31st of this year, so since that date has come and gone, they've pushed the deadline back for that. And as far as Sierra Nevada goes, they still have one more qualification test of doing a unpowered glide test to make sure that it's aerodynamic enough to do maneuvers and to also land safely. Since the last time they did that test, the left landing leg didn't deploy, they just want to have them redo that test to make sure everything's good for that. And that's the last milestone that NASA is actually going to be giving Sierra Nevada money for their Dream Chaser space plane. They also have the last closeout review that's going to be done before their collaboration is finished with NASA. And as far as Sierra Nevada goes, their deadline has been pushed back to March 31st of next year, 2016. So that's really cool, and I hope that they're able to accomplish these tests in a timely manner. But speaking of tests, Carrie Ann, you have something else to tell us about, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that was a brilliant toss.
That was a brilliant toss.
I'm so proud of you, Mike. That was amazing. That was your best toss ever. It's like we know what we're doing. Oh my gosh. Carrie Ann, you have a great test.
I do. The low-density supersonic decelerator, sometimes known as the NASA donut, sometimes known as the yes, come on now.
The
Go to the
LDSD.
picture. Go to the picture. Come on.
That's not a picture. That's video.
Oh, is that video? All right. Well,
there you go.
When
Look,
it still looks like a picture.
It's spinning.
All right. So this is the rocket-powered saucer-shaped test vehicle.
Are you doing this in your sexy voice? What's going on?
Maybe I am. So this is footage from when Meany was allowed in on March 31st to watch one of the final tests before the next flight. There's going to be a new test flight in June. During this particular test, I can speak, the spin table test, the 15-foot wide, 7,000-pound test vehicle was spun up to 30 RPM to check its balance.
There it is spinning.
There it is.
There it goes.
Oh, it's hard to not laugh at this one. It looks like a whoopee cream pie, doesn't it? Anyway, during the experimental test flight coming up in June, a balloon will carry the test vehicle from the naval facility to an altitude of 120,000 feet, or 36 kilometers. There, over the Pacific, it will be dropped, and its booster rocket will kick in and carry it to 180,000 feet, or 55 kilometers, accelerating to Mach 4.
When you start spinning, you know how you get those little pictograms of like the dude running when you start to go faster and faster? That would have been awesome if they put that on the side of that.
Zeotrope. Okay.
Yeah, that one.
Okay.
Is it a zoetrope?
Zoetrope? Zeotrope?
Something like that.
Somebody's going to tell us how wrong we are.
But yeah, they're going to be like, both of you are wrong. Technically, this is the way you pronounce that.
Okay, again, once it is over the Pacific and really, really high, it will inflate to this sort of donut-y shape that it is.
Stories,
yes, you
I?
do. The supersonic inflatable aerodynamic decelerator, the SIAD-R, essentially an inflatable donut, thank you, that increases the vehicle size and, as a result, its drag. It will be deployed at about Mach 3.8. It will quickly slow the vehicle to Mach 2.5, where the parachute, the largest supersonic parachute ever flown, will deploy.
So basically what this is a deceleration technique for going someplace like Mars, where you don't have a lot of atmosphere to work on. You need to increase the surface area of the vehicle.
Because then you get more drag.
You get more drag, so you go to Mars, you increase the surface area, you use additional parachutes, SIAD, I think the SIAD is the parachute.
SIAD, yes.
Yeah, it's
it's
next generation Mars technology, because while the Sky Crane is truly epic and awesome,
yes,
it's also crazy.
Yes.
It even to this day remains a crazy idea. So this will hopefully be
there's
slightly,
no way that ever worked.
Slightly less crazy. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, you're done.
Okay.
There's anything else? No, you're
nope.
done. When we come back, comments from last week's show. Welcome. I still have not fixed that. Welcome back to the show. Now, before we get into viewer comments from last week's show, I want to give a huge shout out to all the patrons of tomorrow who have helped us. I'm shouting out at them, see?
I see
Who have
this.
helped to make this specific segment of this episode happen. This is the one I got confused on before. I was like, it's $5. No, wait, it's $2.50 because we changed it. These, the Patreon Plus subscribers, they are contributing $2.50 or more. They will get instant access to After Dark as soon as I post it. Last week I may have posted it slightly late, but whatever.
But you get it as soon as it happens.
As soon as it happens, you get After Dark. So you don't have to wait for it. Everyone else has to wait 4 weeks or more for After Dark. Oh, but there's more. We also have our patron subscribers. These are Premier. Yep, I probably screwed that up in the timeline.
We thank them again.
We thank them again, and then
We
of course
thank you, as we always do.
our patron subscribers. These are the people who've contributed 1 penny to this specific episode, 1 penny or more, up to $2.49, and you can get more information. There we go. There we go. I knew we'd get to. I was going to fix it in post, but now I'm going to leave it because that's how we roll.
We thank everybody.
Here on tomorrow. We just thanked everyone all over again because you guys are so awesome. Information at patreon.com/TMRO, or if you prefer the Space Pods at patreon.com/SpacePods. Singular. Comment. Go.
Yeah. Simon Allie Nielsen from YouTube. Als Nielsen? I thought I memorized that one. I was not prepared. I
Zoom.
apologize. Says, cleaning that cup is going to suck. Is this something that has been considered?
What Sam mentioned was the idea is you just print the cups, right? So I think
Right.
the idea might be that you 3D print it, and then when you're done with it, you throw it away.
They should be edible then.
But it's
It'd
so
be like Willy
expensive.
Wonka,
It
and
was
you
like
could
it's
just eat the cup.
$1,000 to print that cup. That would
Yeah.
be the world's most expensive cup.
Well, yeah, but there you also have like the injection at the bottom, right? Can you just like inject cleaning fluid too?
Yeah, but it's all going to cling inside the cup. I mean, I guess that's good, but yeah, I don't
Clean
know.
and rinse, or
I don't know. It's a great
Look,
question.
do you want to drink out of a martini glass or don't you?
I do. That'd be kind of cool.
All right,
actually.
then. We'll figure it out
I want a
later.
Goose Martini up dirty dry in space.
Says the
Who's
man.
with me?
Can't have alcohol.
Goose
Okay.
dirty dry up. Goose Martini up dirty dry in space.com. There you go. Someone's gonna do it.
Yeah, they are.
Next up,
Mini Elon says.
Zoom.
Tomorrow, Vasir is the answer to cleaning up space junk and can defend the planet from asteroids.
Well, you know, power requirements notwithstanding. Why? I mean, you still have to deal with scary orbital debris that's moving at extremely fast rates, which could rip through that engine.
Look,
rip
you
through
just
anything.
make the engine out of unobtainium.
Obviously, then you drill to the center of the Earth and you restart the core. We all know this.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that. I'm just going to move on. I'm not sure that will actually. I think orbital debris is a much more complicated thing than, oh, you just need this one technology and everything will work. You know, there's a lot of moving parts to making that happen. So I think there's a lot more to it than just a Vasir engine.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Zach the Great says, #tomorrow keeps me insanely hopeful for the future of space exploration.
Yes, that's why we're here. Although halfway through space news, I'm like, I'm giddy now. So everyone's like, Ben's an idiot. But I did have a comment for his interview that you chose to skip over, I noticed.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Let me read it. My comment during...
Well, the thing is, it wasn't a question.
It was. It was in the form of a question.
No, it wasn't.
Why is Ben Credible so freaking amazing, and how can we extend that to SpaceUp? Which you did not ask on air.
First
I don't know
of all,
why.
SpaceUp is already amazing, and it doesn't need any more of your kind of
Whatever.
amazing.
Whatever. Thank you. You know, we're here to inspire. We're here to help. That's why we're here. Hopefully you're enjoying space. You're having fun. We try not to be the kind of stuffy suits. Like most of the aerospace industry is a bunch of people in suits who take life very... Space is serious business and should be taken seriously.
Space is boring.
And they make space boring. Hopefully we make it entertaining for you. Hopefully you have a little bit of fun. It's jovial. And it's not boring. It's some of the most amazing and awesome things that humans have ever done. And we're excited and happy to have you here with us. with us. So, all right, moving along. I see he wanted me to move along already, so zoom!
Chris Marshall from YouTube says, another great show. Could a couple of things came up during the show. The hashtag for year in space is hashtag year in space. Doesn't have the 1 in it.
Well, with that particular show last week, that's a minor mistake as compared to running the wrong launch coverage. So I'm going to give us that one, all right?
And they've done planned longer missions before on the Mir space station. This is just the first plan for the International Space Station.
That's true. Russia has done a lot of really cool long-duration space missions before, and I just kind of forgot about Mir, which was silly also. I really shouldn't have. But yeah, this is the first really, truly long-duration mission on station, International Space Station. What they're gearing up to do is test and see how the human body will perform on these long-duration trips to and from Mars, and kind of hopefully what it's going to be like a little bit on Mars. But what they need to do is get a centrifuge going. There was supposed to be one on station. There isn't. Like a whole section that was supposed to be a centrifuge. Hopefully get that get all that research going to figure out are we going to be able to survive the trip to space. So all right, moving along.
All right, Mr. Gripley?
Zoo.
I believe that's the way you say that. Really enjoyed the show. You guys are really finding your stride. Keep up the great work.
Fooled you.
Hilarious. Did you watch last week's show?
That's funny. That's funny.
You know, I don't know. Maybe people just like it better when we screw up anyway.
Oh, maybe. You know, it is. You know, actually, I got comments on that before. Some people were like, because we screwed up obviously we screwed up the launch coverage pretty badly. I mean, airing the wrong footage.
That's probably one of the worst screws we've had on
in a long time. But I think a lot of people forget we don't really edit the show. It's live. It's live to tape, and anything we screw up pretty much stays in the show. If there's a hard stop, we'll edit that out. But for the most part, no, you see what you get. So. Yeah, when things go, I think it adds to the show.
When things go wrong, it can be entertaining. When we give out some misinformation, I want to be very clear about that. We do our best to try and retract that or issue a statement, or we do try to make it right as best that we can. You guys definitely keep us on our toes, and you definitely keep us very, very honest. So we thank you for any times that we may have missed something or given out some misinformation. You are very quick to correct us.
You know, we try not to, but we're human and stuff happens. So there you go. All right, and before we go, the reason the old computers are back is because the Surfaces, which I do prefer, I decided to upgrade to Windows 10. You can tell how that went by the computers sitting on the table. All right, we're going to go ahead and go into After Dark after this. If you're a Patreon Plus subscriber or watching live, that'll be up next, and you'll have instant access to it. Otherwise, for everyone else, that'll be available in about 4 weeks. Thank you so much for watching. See you next week.